of actually doing the whole head coaching thing. So what was it like just for you?
Yeah, it was informative. Like, it's one of those things I'd love to, at the end of each year, bring in about 5 or 6 coaches and just interview them. You can't do that unless you got an opening, but I knew I would learn some things. I learned a vast amount of knowledge about, because you start asking them, like, how does this coach do things? What do y'all do? And just from scheduling to how you do road games to how you start training camp, the ramp-up process. I mean, we got into player care, just how you do. I mean, one team was talking about when you got to phase 1, there's no football talk. It's running, lifting, and getting to know each other. There was just so many tangible examples of things that I want to sit with Joe and kind of share with him what I learned. But it was tiring, but it was fun. I loved every minute. I would have loved to have kept it going and just keep rolling people in. But you also see coaches coming off the board, and you're like, all right, we've got some good candidates. We need to narrow this down and make a selection.
Sometimes an assistant coach it's a challenging transition sometimes for these guys. What was it about Joe's personality, his approach that you've seen the last 4 years that gave you confidence that he can step in and some dynamics might change in terms of relationships, but he's the guy who can handle that?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I thought about later in the process, not when we started it, when we were kind of narrowing it down, was Joe was the quarterback coach, and mid-season was handed the job with, there's no preparation, there was no interview, it was just, and he didn't just pick up and run the same thing. Like, he knew there was a change that needed to be made, and while he couldn't do wholesale changes to the offense, he brought things that are not about X's and O's to the group, the attitude, the communication, the energy, and you felt at practice just a different energy when Joe took over that. And so I think things like that give you confidence to do that. But I truly did not try to think of Joe as working for us. I just thought the fairest process to compare each candidate is that none of them, including Brian Dable, that I'd ever worked with, and kind of clear that from my head.
Brandon, you didn't cross over with Joe in Carolina, but what did you know about him before he came to this organization?
Yeah, so you knew that, listen, it didn't work out there with his team, and obviously they made changes shortly after at the top. But so many people, when we hired him, you're doing. I didn't interview Joe. That would have been Ken Dorsey at the time. I don't know how much. I'm sure Sean was involved at some level. I was down at the Senior Bowl when we did it, but from the Senior Bowl, while I'm hearing names that we're looking at, I did call some people in Carolina and that were still there, and some that had moved on, and they just. Some of them have texted me this, man, love Joe. Like, they really enjoyed the person, the character, the DNA, and they hated that it didn't work there. But he was a guy they would continue to root for, and they're like, he will fit your culture if you guys bring him in there.
Brandon, you talked a lot about the CEO part of this and how important that was. You ended up only talking to 2 guys who have had CEO experience. Why go so far away from that unique quality to the guys that really didn't have that quality in terms of who you talked to?
Yeah, good question. Everyone's got to have a chance and get a start. And like I said, I tried to reflect on my own. I was an interim GM, and I wanted it, but I was also told at the end that they needed someone from outside the building, and it's just like, but when my interview, I expressed the things that I would change, and that's why I thought personally that was the best way to approach this, is to not view that Joe had been here or never been in that seat. Would you love to hire someone who you've seen done it, been successful? Sure, but you also don't want to discount that Joe doesn't have the qualities to learn and grow on the job, and maybe have a higher ceiling than some of the people that have already done it.
Brandon, how did you weigh Joe's offensive philosophy versus the existing continuity of the culture?
Continuity had nothing to do with it. We set out and treated this, again, that Joe was never here. I think that's the fairest way. So we were not worried about continuity. It was about finding the right fit for this team and to be the next head coach of the Bills.
Brandon, the comments last week about Keon Coleman certainly took off. What sort of dialogue have you had with Keon, his representation, and how would you categorize the relationship between both sides right now?
Yeah, I think it's very good. anything can, the intent, I know from Terry was not, how it was stated. He was trying to explain a draft process, and sometimes you get down to 2 or 3 people, and you don't always agree on the order, whether it's coaches, personnel, whatever. But at the end of the day, we were excited to turn in the card for Keon. We know the first 2 years have had some bumps in the road. As I said last week, the key with Keon is the on-the-field stuff is good. No one, from the quarterback to Joe to anyone, no one. It's just when you have some of the immaturity things that came up, that costs trust, which costs opportunities. And so he is going to need to continue this offseason. He needs to do what he did last offseason, have the same training camp all of us here witnessed and the first game, and not let anything get in the way. But yes, I talked to his couple great talks with his agent. Keon and I we've traded multiple messages, and he is head down, ready to go, and that's our plan moving forward.
Where are you guys cap-wise? How much work are you going to have to do with the sight of a new coach and maybe new staff in mind?
Yeah, we'll get more numbers. We have some, kind of a ballpark of where we think I'm going to guess we're, on the low end, 15, 16, over the cap, maybe to 20, 21. So hopefully, I'm always rooting for more dollars. You guys know that. Yes, we got more than we thought. But we've already started thinking about moves. I was honestly, before this head coaching change, already thinking about certain things we'll do. I'll have to circle back to some of that, because once the head coaching search began, that's been the 100% focus. So now that we do that, we'll focus. But we got time. The next thing is to get the correct coordinators, assistant coaches in here, get them in. Let's talk about our personnel, and let's make sure we're making the right decisions, not to move on from someone too soon, but also not too late.
You mentioned Josh had his foot fixed.
Yes.
Could you tell us what all that entails?
Yeah, so he had, and I don't know all the technical terms, even though I try to tell people I'm a doctor, I'm really not. He had a type of a break in there, somewhere on the outer part of his foot, and so he went down to Birmingham and got it fixed. He left our interview process Sunday night and got it fixed on Monday, and he's in a boot, I think, and walking around. But as I said last week, he should be. You never know. You can always have set, but he should be ready to roll this spring. But I tell you, as Joe said on there, you just talk about toughness and what 17 brings. We know he's a great player, but if you're a teammate of his, knowing what he was out there doing and playing on, how could you ever not go out there yourself and lay it on the line? He's a warrior, and I am appreciative of what he played through this past season to try and help us, win that title.
Was that since Cleveland?
Yes.
We got to go. Get